You know what's funny? People think the most stressful part of flying is being on the airplane. For me, it's everything that happens before I even reach my seat. The moment I walk into an airport, my brain suddenly starts asking 100 questions. Did I bring my passport? Is my gate going to change? Is my backpack too heavy? Did I remember my headphones? Airports have this strange ability to make perfectly organized people question every decision they've made in the last 24 hours.
I know exactly what you mean. It's almost like airports create their own little universe. The second those automatic doors open, normal life disappears. Suddenly, everyone is walking quickly, looking at giant departure screens, pulling suitcases behind them, drinking coffee that's somehow twice as expensive as everywhere else, and trying to look calm even when they're secretly checking their boarding pass every 2 minutes. It's funny because thousands of people are doing completely different journeys, but for a little while, they're all sharing the same experience.
And I always become one of those people who arrives ridiculously early. My friends laugh at me because if my flight leaves at noon, they know I'll probably be here before breakfast. I keep telling myself it's better to relax at the gate than to spend the whole morning worrying about traffic or long security lines. Then I arrive 3 hours early, and somehow I still convince myself I'm running late.
That's because airports play tricks on your sense of time. You look at your watch, realize boarding doesn't start for another hour, and think, great, I have plenty of time. 5 minutes later, you're staring at the departure screen again just to make sure your flight still exists. Nothing has changed, but checking somehow makes you feel better. I don't know why we do that, but almost everyone does it.
Speaking of departure screens, I love watching them. Not because I'm looking for my flight, but because every destination tells a little story. Tokyo, Madrid, Toronto, Sydney, Sao Paulo. Each city represents hundreds of people who are about to start something new. Some are going home after years away. Some are beginning a vacation they've been planning forever. Others are traveling for work and probably wish they were somewhere else entirely. One screen somehow contains thousands of different lives.
That's one of my favorite things about airports, too. You can sit in one chair and quietly imagine where everyone is going. Look over there. That family is clearly excited. The little boy is practically bouncing while holding his backpack. A few seats away, that business traveler hasn't looked up from his laptop in 20 minutes. Then there's the older couple by the window. They're smiling at every airplane that passes by. Nobody has said a word to each other, but somehow you can almost guess their stories just by watching them for a few minutes.
You know what always surprises me? No matter how many times I fly, I still look at my passport at least 3 times before security. I already know it's there. I put it in the same pocket every single trip, but somehow I still need that little moment of reassurance. It's almost a ritual now,
Really?
every single time.
I think everyone has their own airport ritual. Mine is checking the gate number over and over again, even after I already know it. I see gate B27, I walk toward gate B27, and then 5 minutes later I look at the screen again just to confirm that B27 is still B27.
Airports don't exactly encourage confidence.
They don't.
Everything feels important. Your passport, your boarding pass, your luggage, your seat number. Even finding the right line suddenly feels like a life decision.
And then you notice something interesting.
What's that?
Most people look just as uncertain as you do. Even experienced travelers stop for a second to read the signs. They check the departure boards. They look around before choosing a line. It reminds you that nobody knows everything. They're simply figuring it out one step at a time, just like everyone else.
That's actually comforting. Sometimes we imagine that everyone else knows exactly what they're doing, and we're the only ones who feel a little lost.
Exactly.
But if you spend 5 minutes watching people at an airport, you realize we're all basically asking the same questions. Am I in the right place? Is this the correct gate? How much time do I have? It's a shared experience, even if nobody says it out loud.
You know what I love about airports?
Let me guess. The coffee?
Besides the coffee.
The people watching?
Exactly. There may not be a better place in the world for it. Everyone is heading somewhere, but everyone looks completely different. Some are nervous, some can't stop smiling.
And then there are the people sprinting through the terminal.
Those always make me nervous.
Me too. Even when they're running for a different flight, part of my brain immediately thinks, wait, should I be running too?
It's contagious.
It really is. One person starts running, another person looks at the departure board, someone else checks their watch, and suddenly half the terminal feels like something important is about to happen.
That's why I try not to copy other people's stress. Their flight might be boarding, mine might not leave for another hour.
That's a good life lesson, actually.
How so?
We spend a lot of time comparing our journey to someone else's. Airports remind me that everyone is on a different schedule. Just because someone else is rushing doesn't mean I have to.
I like that.
Look over there.
The couple by the window?
Yeah. They've been sitting there quietly for almost 10 minutes, just watching the airplanes. They're not looking at their phones. They're not in a hurry. They're just enjoying the moment.
Maybe this is their first big trip together.
Or maybe they've traveled 100 times and still haven't lost that feeling.
I hope that's true. I never want airports to become ordinary.
Me neither. Every flight feels like the beginning of a new story.
And every departure gate feels like the first page of a new chapter.
You know something I've always found interesting? Airports are one of the few places where people from all over the world are suddenly sharing the same space. You hear different languages every few seconds. Someone is saying goodbye. Someone else is saying hello. A business meeting is about to begin for one person, while another is finally starting a vacation they've dreamed about for years. It's amazing how one building can hold so many different emotions at the same time.
And that's true. If you stop for a minute and really look around, you realize an airport is much more than a transportation hub. It's full of little human stories. Some people are laughing because they're traveling with friends. Others are hugging their families before a long goodbye. Then there are the solo travelers, quietly looking out the window, probably wondering what the next few days will bring.
I always wonder where people are going, not in a curious or intrusive way, just imagining their adventure. That student with the backpack might be studying abroad for the first time. That older gentleman may be visiting his grandchildren. The woman typing on her laptop could be flying to an important meeting that changes her career.
And the funny thing is that everyone probably thinks their own journey is the ordinary one, while somebody else is looking at them and thinking, I wonder where they're going.
Exactly. We all become part of someone else's background for a few minutes.
That's kind of beautiful when you think about it.
It is. Airports remind me that the world is much bigger than our daily routine. You spend weeks driving the same roads, going to the same office or the same grocery store. And then you come here, and suddenly the entire world feels connected by a few departure gates and a boarding pass.
Maybe that's why I enjoy arriving early so much. It's not because I love waiting, it's because I like having time to slow down and take everything in. Once boarding starts, everything moves quickly. But before that, there's this quiet moment where you can simply sit, watch the airplanes, and let the adventure begin. Can I tell you one of my favorite moments before every flight?
Let me guess, when they finally announce that boarding has started.
Not even close. It's actually a few minutes before that. Everyone is sitting down, the airplanes are parked outside the windows, and for a little while, nothing is happening. There's this strange feeling of anticipation. You know you're about to leave, but you haven't left yet.
I know exactly what you mean. It's like standing between two chapters of your life. Whatever happened before you arrived at the airport is already behind you. But the next part of your journey hasn't started either. For a few minutes, you're simply waiting.
And waiting isn't something most of us enjoy.
Not normally.
But airports somehow make waiting feel different. You don't feel like you're wasting time. You feel like something exciting is getting closer.
Unless your flight gets delayed.
Well, that's a different conversation.
It really changes the mood, doesn't it? 5 minutes earlier, everyone is smiling, buying snacks, and looking out the window. Then the departure board suddenly changes from on time to delayed, and you can almost feel the entire gate, at the same time.
It's amazing how one little word on a screen can affect hundreds of people at once.
Thankfully, most delays aren't the end of the world. They're just inconvenient.
Exactly. And after traveling a few times, you learn something important. Some things are simply outside your control. The airplane will leave when it's safe to leave. Worrying about it doesn't make the clock move any faster.
Speaking of waiting, have you noticed how airports have become little cities?
They really have.
Years ago, people just found their gate and sat there. Now you can spend hours exploring bookstores, restaurants, coffee shops, little souvenir stores. Sometimes I forget I'm even inside an airport.
I always end up walking around. Even if I know exactly where my gate is, I like exploring the terminal. Every airport has its own personality. Some feel calm and elegant, others are full of energy, some are so quiet you almost whisper without realizing it.
And then there are the airports, where you feel like you've walked 10 miles before reaching your gate.
Those moving walkways suddenly become your best friend.
Especially when your backpack somehow gets heavier every 20 minutes.
That's airport physics.
Exactly. The backpack weighs the same when you leave home, but after an hour of walking through the terminal, it feels like you've packed bricks instead of clothes.
Maybe that's why everyone is so happy when they finally sit down at the gate.
It's not just because they're waiting for the flight.
It's because they finally completed the airport marathon.
You know what airports have taught me over the years? Patience. Not because everything moves slowly, but because so many things are outside your control. Once you've checked in your luggage and walked through security, there isn't much left to do except trust the process. The weather might change, your gate might change, boarding might start 10 minutes later than expected. At some point, you realize that constantly checking your watch doesn't actually help. The airplane will leave when it's ready, and your job is simply to be there when your name or your boarding group is called.
That's such an interesting way to look at it. We spend so much of our daily lives trying to control every little detail. We plan our schedules, organize our calendars, answer emails, solve problems, and then we come to an airport where we're reminded that some things simply happen on their own timeline. In a strange way, I think that's one reason I enjoy traveling. It forces me to let go a little. Once I'm here, I stop thinking about everything waiting for me back home and focus on the journey that's about to begin.
Maybe that's why airports feel so different from almost anywhere else. They're one of the few places where people give themselves permission to pause. Look around for a second. Some people are reading, others are listening to music, a few are simply watching airplanes take off without saying a word. In everyday life, we'd probably call that doing nothing. But here, it somehow feels meaningful, almost like your mind understands that before discovering somewhere new, it's okay to slow down for a while.
I couldn't agree more, and I think that's something many travelers remember long after the trip is over. Sometimes the journey itself becomes part of the memory. You remember the excitement of arriving at the airport before sunrise, the first coffee of the day while looking out at the runway, the sound of rolling suitcases across the floor, or the moment your gate finally appears on the departure screen. Those little moments aren't the destination, but somehow they become part of the adventure too.
You know, we've talked about passports, boarding passes, departure boards, coffee, delays, backpacks, and even people running through the terminal. But I don't think this conversation was really about airports.
I was thinking the same thing. Airports were just the setting. What we've really been talking about is something much bigger. Every trip begins with a little uncertainty. You never know exactly how the journey will unfold, but you go anyway. And I think speaking English is very similar.
That's true. The first conversation can feel a lot like your first flight. You wonder if you'll understand everything. You worry about making mistakes. You imagine all the things that could go wrong. Then you take that first step, and little by little you realize that most of your fears never actually happen.
Exactly. Every confident English speaker had a first conversation, just like every experienced traveler had a first flight. Nobody starts as an expert. Confidence grows one experience at a time. One question, one answer, one trip, one conversation.
So maybe the lesson isn't to wait until you feel completely ready.
It's to begin anyway.
Pack your curiosity.
Bring your confidence, even if it's still a work in progress.
And don't worry if the journey isn't perfect.
Because the most memorable adventures rarely are.
We hope today's conversation made you feel a little more comfortable, not only about traveling, but about using your English in real life.
And the next time you find yourself at an airport somewhere in the world, maybe you'll recognize a few words, understand a few announcements, start a small conversation, and realize you've come much farther than you thought.
Thank you for spending part of your journey with us today.
Have a wonderful trip,
Wherever you're going,
and we'll see you in the next conversation.
take care, everyone.